All right, welcome to Maddie's Monthly Foster Connection, a monthly webcast where we learn about topics of interest to those of us who are interested in starting and expanding foster programs. Our guest today is Ryan Miller. Ryan Miller is currently the grants manager for the Animal Foundation and has been with the company for nearly 6 years. He graduated from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln in 2010 with a degree in mathematics and further pursued master's coursework in industrial engineering with an emphasis in project management. He has an educational and professional background in project management, financial forecasting, program developing, and operational auditing. He refined these skills in large-scale retailers and technological law firms, gaining experience and has since carried this knowledge over into the nonprofit sector. He left the for-profit world in 2019 to pursue his lifelong passion in animal welfare, starting with animal admissions department and working his way through multiple areas, including foster, community outreach, and accounting. He ultimately ended up in the development department. In his current role, he works heavily with nearly all departments in the shelter, helping to create or enhance programs with funding, planning, and implementation. In his off time, he enjoys hiking desert trails of the Mojave Desert, training his AM staff, soul dog, and reading fantasy novels. Welcome, Ryan.
Hello, thank you so much, Kelly. All right. So as I'm sure you read through the synopsis, this presentation is going to deal with growing your foster program. Now, this is not about building it from the ground up. Rather, it is about increasing live release rates for your at-risk animals. In particular, I'm going to be focusing on some of the two highest risk populations within a shelter and a rescue. That would be your large dogs that have been with you for a long time, your long length of stays, and also your neonatal kittens, which, as we all know, are very, very difficult to deal with. So both of these are going to be looked at through a foster lens, and we are going to jump right in. So I do want to give a little bit of a background of who did this pilot program. As Kelly mentioned, I'm with the Animal Foundation, and we are the country's single largest single site municipal shelter. We take in around 25,000 animals every year. Last year, we were just shy of 29,000. But I say that because I do want to point out that we are very large. I do admit that, but please don't disregard this information if you've got smaller organizations. Because we're so large and we do have the funding to fall back on other programs, we're able to test pilot these programs that we don't know are going to work or not. That we have an existing foster program, that we have an existing transfer program. So because of that, we were able to try some innovative or different things. So I hope you walk away with some tips that you'd be able to steal from our program that I'll be showing. I do want to say that the euthanasia will be the focus of this discussion because when I say at risk of, large, long stay dogs and neonate kittens, that is their biggest hurdle for many, many reasons, as we all know. So the focus of this discussion is going to be talking about how fostering can avoid euthanasia as a whole, but more on that in a moment. And for those rescues out there, rescues in some shelters that are at or near 100% live release rate, as I'm sure you know, kennel neurosis issues are just as important. Some animals start displaying it pretty much immediately upon entry into a kennel if you're not a foster-based organization. So even with those really high live release rates where euthanasia might not be as big of a concern, these, particularly the foster field trip that we'll be talking about, will help a lot with information for potential adopters as well as just avoiding in-kennel stress. I'm going to be using quite a few definitions throughout here, so I did want to make sure that we're all on the same page. The first one that even I will admit I will misspeak a little bit throughout this is compulsive behaviors. Historically, I have and many of my colleagues have called it kennel neurosis. My lead behavior manager here at the Animal Foundation wagged her finger at me. It is apparently compulsive behaviors, but kennel syndrome, caged dog syndrome, all of them are pointing to functionally the same thing. We have all seen it. Compulsive, repetitive behavior. It's often self-harming. My own dog went through it when she was in the shelter. And it's not always, but often a direct lack of exercise, social interaction, and mental stimulation. Of course, we all do what we can for in-kennel enrichment, which is great. It should absolutely be done no matter what, and foster field trips should not replace in-kennel enrichment. But as we know, getting out of a kennel will trump in-kennel enrichment 9 times out of 10. So that is a big focus of this presentation. On that note, segue into foster field trips. We all have cute names for programs like this, but to actually define what I'm going to be calling foster field trip, it's any time spent in foster care from just a few hours up to 2 weeks. I do want to point out that the vast majority of data that you'll see in this presentation is from just a few hours of a foster field trip. Some of it was overnight, but the majority of it was just pick up in the morning, drop off at night. To just give the dog some time out of the kennel. It was marketed as mostly a take a dog out for a day situation. And we really focus on returning it same day or next day. But again, we define this as up to 2 weeks. Moving on from the dogs, for the neonatal kittens. I will be using that just as short term. I'm aware that there are multiple stages of kittens, but for neonates, I'm going to be using a broad brush to refer to any kittens from 0 weeks up to 5 weeks as neonates. But the big ones that we're going to be talking about are those really fragile, the true neonatals, the 0 to 3 weeks. As we all know, they require around-the-clock care, especially if mom's not around. Bottle feeding every 2 to 3 hours, stimulating to go to the bathroom, all of that. It's exhausting, as I'm sure many and many of you know. And I will be talking about whether or not they're admitted with their mother because the approach will, of course, be different. And then the last one, the big one, the behavioral euthanasia. I'm actually just going to go ahead and read this quote from Best Friends Animal Society. Euthanasia means ending the life of an animal who is suffering from an irreparable medical or behavioral condition that does not allow for an acceptable quality of life. That last part is really what we're driving home here, particularly with those compulsive behaviors. I will be referring to euthanasia a lot, but for the sake of brevity, I'm going to be leaving out those aggressive or those defensive behaviors that can pose a safety risk to humans. More so when I'm saying euthanasia throughout this presentation, I want you to understand I'm talking about behavioral euthanasia, particularly as it relates to compulsive behaviors and kennel neurosis, of just deteriorating within the kennel. The only exception to that is with those neonate kittens, because as we know, medical euthanasia is very common with them, unfortunately. But just for the sake of brevity, those are the types of euthanasia I am talking about, not the ones that can pose a danger to humans. So with that out of the way, we're going to start up with foster field trips. The goal of this program was to reduce length of stay, compulsive behaviors, and of course, euthanasia. So we are going to get into that. So first off, I do want to point out my own dog. This is Sheska. That's the Amstaff Kelly introduced with, and this is her on training someone else on how to do a foster field trip. So as an overall program overview, patrons are able to come in and foster from anywhere from just a few hours up to 2 weeks. And this gives us some great behavioral information. More on that in a moment. But that behavioral information of how they do with kids, how they do on a leash, how they do in a car, things that it might be impossible to learn within the shelter. We're able to get that information and pass on to adopters. And I do want to point out on there that patrons are able to come to us, no appointment necessary. And I'll touch more on that here in a moment, but that is something that we do push for. Another big thing you're going to hear me say over and over again, you will get tired of hearing me say it, is making it free and fun. We provide all supplies, be it food, water dishes, disposable water bowls, harnesses, leashes, everything you can imagine. Of course, it's very case by case of just what a particular dog will need, but that's the goal. Because of course, these foster people, our fosters, are functionally volunteers. You shouldn't have to pay to be a volunteer. And that even boils down to just giving them a treat pouch. On top of that, we give suggestions for local hiking, pet-friendly businesses, parks, and all of that. That is something that I do want to say that you should work very heavily with your marketing and development teams to foster those relationships, because I guarantee you they would already be able to give you a list of places that would be good to take these foster field trip dogs. And then this one will be limited more towards the shelters, not so much rescues, but we do limit ours to large adult dogs with a preference of long lengths of stay. Of course, if you're running a specific rescue that only takes in small dogs or only takes in senior dogs, that will look a little bit different for you. But for those of you running open admission shelters, as we know, the small dogs typically don't really need the help getting adopted at the rates that the large dogs do. So with our program, it was specifically large dogs. We actually don't allow small dogs to go on foster field trips because it's those long lengths of stay for those adult dogs that really need that out of kennel enrichment. And before going into what we actually did, I did want to show some data here. All of this data applies only to dogs that participated in at least one foster field trip. So this is not shelter statistics. These are participating dog statistics. And you'll notice that the numbers are only for 6 months, and that is for a reason. We made a very drastic change in what our foster field trip program looked like in mid-2024. So I wasn't really able to take data of all of 2024 because it would skew the data. But regardless, our data is consistent to this day because now we've got 2025 data to lean on. And before I dive into this, for those of you that are looking to create this program on your own, but you don't have data of your own, please use ours. We've got a great data size here. If you're doing grant applications, presenting to funders, take a screenshot of this, show them the differences that it made. But we saw over triple the number of foster field trips during that time. Our length of stay went down by 36%, which is fantastic. Again, these are lengths of stay of participating dogs, which are specifically long lengths of stay. These are not shelter statistics. These are participating dog statistics. We were surprised to see that the live release rate didn't really change. I mean, it went up a little bit, but not in a statistically significant way. But the foster fail rate, which we all know about that, we weren't expecting that at all. That was just a surprise of the data, almost doubled. So even though live release rate didn't really change, you'll notice that length of stay. Go ahead and ask your director of operations how much it costs to have these dogs each day, and multiply that by the number of foster field trips, and that is thousands of dollars saved every year. It won't show up on your P&L, of course, but your finance department will certainly feel that. So if you're presenting this as a budget concern, that is something to point out that I think is very relevant. So let's move into what we actually did instead of just talking about data. What we changed. We have had the foster field trip program at the Animal Foundation for many years, many years, but it's always been a passive thing for us. It was referenced on our website. If people came in, we could juggle it, make it work, but we didn't really start pushing it until late 2023 and especially into 2024. And these are things that we really changed to see that significant spike in mid-2024. The biggest one, I shouldn't say biggest, one of the big ones was the marketing push. Community education, just letting the community know that this is something that we even do. Because most people hear the word fostering and they think months on end, which, traditional fostering is, months or years that you have the same animal. So educating them of what even that a foster field trip is. And then, of course, event tabling, just having collateral saying this is what's offered, and partnering with local businesses. I will bring that up quite a bit in this presentation as well, to speak to your marketing and fundraising departments to give people a place to actually go with these dogs, not just a park, but maybe a restaurant with a pet-friendly patio, or hiking trails, or pet-friendly malls if your location has that. And again, really relying on those free and fun messaging. You want people to know that this isn't going to cost them anything. It's an afternoon obligation, and come and have fun with it. The other one that you'll hear me talk a lot about are special hours. So the Animal Foundation is located in Las Vegas, and for those of you that don't know, it gets very, very hot here. During our summer months, our facility doesn't open until 11, and by then we're already looking at triple-digit weather. It's very hot. So what we found is that people simply weren't coming to us, and that was feedback that we got from our patrons that, hey, I would love to foster field trip, but it's already excruciatingly hot by the time I come. So we did alter our hours a little bit, which came with some happy surprises, that it avoided other patron traffic because, like most of you, I'm sure, our foster window or foster desk is in the same lobby as our adoptions. And that can create a lot of congestion. It can create confusion of where to go. So what we functionally did is we still opened, like our facility opened at 11, but our foster window would open at 8 a.m., 7 a.m. It depended on what was going on, to where patrons would come in and it's only foster. It was much less stressful on the animals. It was easier for the patrons. And again, weather was a consideration. And just accommodating schedules as a whole. Some people are just more available in the mornings. The staffing, I know that will be a point of contention because that is without a doubt the most expensive part of any program. But whether it's paid or volunteer, having staffing that exclusively processes foster field trips, if at all possible. I'll talk about the benefits of separating it from your traditional fosters later on in the presentation. But such staff are specially trained to specifically match fosters with dogs that would be a good fit. So if a foster comes in saying, I want to go on a hike, I'm a jogger, I'm a cross-country runner, great. Here's a husky, here's a cattle dog. Meanwhile, if you say someone that says, hey, I'm just going to go get lunch at, wherever there's a pet-friendly place, great, here's a senior pity. Just that communication aspect that really, A, matches dogs with where they should be going, and B, allows the patrons to feel like they're being heard. And then the last one is expanded supplies, like I've touched on. We tried a lot of supplies. I will admit we threw spaghetti at the wall to see what stuck, and these are the ones that stuck. The 2-in-1 water bowls, where it's like a water container with a collapsible bowl attached to it for the dogs. Misting spray bottles. Again, it's very hot where I live, and people loved those for both the dogs if they're going on a run, but even for themselves. So that was a very good feedback that we got from our patrons. And of course, the givens, the collapsible bowls, the collars, leashes. But other ones that we found were a big hit were the car hammocks and car leashes. The car leashes are probably the biggest thing that we found that people really wanted. If you're not familiar, it's like a buckle that you just put in the back seat and then it clips onto their harness or collar. And it is safe for the animal because it contains them to the back seat, but it's also safe for the patron to prevent the dog from going up front. Because as we know, even the best behaved dogs, they've been cooped up, they've been in a kennel, they're excited to get into a car, or even the nervous ones that don't like cars, it just contains them in the back seat. So that was something that we found was a big success. For marketing, off to the left, you're going to see what we did for just giving suggestions on actually where to go. I can't stress this enough. Please get permission from these places, but work with your marketing and fundraising departments to identify places that people can go. The normals like Petco, PetSmart, you might not need to get permission for. They open their doors to animals. But there are pet-friendly restaurants or malls that are just as a whole going to be pet friendly, like outdoor malls. But especially with those restaurants, even if you know that they're pet friendly, have your fundraising or marketing department reach out to them, because that happened to us, that we did that and all of a sudden we had these partnerships that turned into actual profitable fundraising ventures. So definitely work with them to get that done. And of course, routinely promote it on your social media, just letting the public know that this is even an option. Many shelters and rescues do not do this, so it is not in the public zeitgeist to even know that this is a thing that's an option. So until there's momentum going in the community, you might want to have some kind of social media calendar of showing pictures on foster field trips or showing how to do it. And the note that I do want to put on there is I put on this presentation, including how to give, because no matter what, no matter how easy you make it, there will still be people that can't participate, but they might love the program and want to give to it. Create an Amazon wish list of all of those supplies I talked about before, that they're allowed to feel ownership of the program, even if they themselves can't come pick up a dog, that they can say, hey, I bought 5 harnesses that I know are going to be used for this. Another one is a bit more down to earth of addressing concerns, because we've heard I don't want to call them excuses because they're valid, but we've heard every reasoning in the book of my dog hates other dogs. I don't have time. I don't want to bring my dog back because I don't want to bring the foster back because it's going to traumatize them. Address those concerns, both in social media and in face-to-face, that it's fine if your dog hates other dogs. Your dog will never meet this dog you're taking on a foster field trip. Not having time takes a day. It's an afternoon. I'm not asking for you to take this dog for a month. Things like that. Just be very frank and transparent with your patrons. A big one that your marketing and fundraising department will love are encouraging photos. Really get people to take photos while they're out and about with these dogs, because they're going to be happy. They're going to be loose. They're going to have good body language. Hopefully they'll have good body language being out and about out of their kennel. But that'll give you fundraising opportunities, but also give you great photos for their adoptable profiles. We all have photos. We know photos can make or break an adoption to even get people in the door. So that's a big one. And lastly, again, free and fun. This has to, I shouldn't say have to, but in our experience, people want to help. They absolutely want to help, but they want it to be free. And this is a fun thing. So provide them with the supplies. Encourage them to, hey, if you're going on running, here's a 6-foot leash, that kind of thing. I know that you all have a copy of this presentation, but I did want to throw up a QR code here. I've gotten permission from our chief marketing officer to share our marketing assets. So please do take note of this link, take note of the QR code. These are all downloadable assets that I believe will be made available a little bit later. But take them, remove our logo, slap your logo on there. In there is also the kennel card report card that we encourage fosters to fill out of how they did in the car, that kind of thing. So, yeah, please utilize those. Use them as much as you want. Rebrand them. We don't care. The verbiage is all there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Talking about special hours. So, this is very region specific, so I will try and keep it as generalized as I can. But look at your weather. A good chunk of us live in very hot weather, but even though those of you that live in very cold weather, maybe opening later rather than earlier, like what we do. But the big thing is, I brought this up earlier, is that just extended hours do help to avoid traffic, and it helps with communication, that you're not in this busy room in the same place that people are there to adopt and do a foster field trip. And of course, for the animals themselves, when we're talking about foster field trips, you're going to constantly have dogs coming and going. It does lower the stress with that because you're getting fewer interactions. You could also consider utilizing a foster field trip day. So here at the Animal Foundation, we are closed on Mondays, and we did pilot this a couple times that we would pull people from other departments to help really drive home a foster field trip day of getting people in the door on Monday to engage the public. It did work, not as much as we would have expected, but again, that could just be our community. So I would encourage you to at least try it and see if it makes a difference. It also is a great day to pair with a deep cleaning day because ideally you're going to get a bunch of dogs out and those kennels are going to be empty all day. So just as an idea to run across your operations department. And then with your volunteer department, promote team building outings. So I'm sure we've all gotten calls of, hey, my organization wants to do a team building exercise. We want to take out some dogs. Great. That is a much easier lift for foster field trip versus them coming into the shelter and actually working. So partner with local businesses and accommodate their schedules. Something I do want to point out on these special hours is we do not require appointments. As long as we are open to the public, people are able to come. I acknowledge that might not work for your organization. I would encourage you to try it. You want to remove as many barriers as possible because as we know, if there is just, sometimes people just get fatigued that there was just one too many things for them to do to actually participate and then they give up. So if you're able to remove that barrier, I would encourage you to do so, or at the very least, tell the public, hey, we are doing our foster field trip window is open from 11 to 3. Come by anytime, no appointment necessary. We did used to require appointments and it did not go well, just to be transparent. Once we removed that barrier, it increased manyfold. So just something to take back and something to consider. And then again, talking about staffing. I've already talked about extended hours, but I know staffing can be expensive. So if we want to avoid the extended hours, altering your hours is also an option. It's something that we are considering doing for our summer months this year, that instead of working 11 to 7, they might work 8 to 4 instead, just shifting that over so it's not costing you any more in staffing hours for your foster field trip people. But of course, if we can do the extended, that's obviously ideal. And also, I touched on this earlier of having that specialized training of how to actually pair the proper dog with the proper foster. Because, if someone wants to come that they want to go run the park and you give them an 11-year-old pitty, they might not have the best experience. Good for the dog, but not necessarily good for the patron to have them continuing to come back. Your staff should also be familiar with what I would call a wish list dog. This could be as simple as just sorting your large dogs from highest length of stay to lowest. But it could also be a more curated list of, hey, we know for a fact that these dogs are at risk of euthanasia because of compulsive behaviors. We know they need to get out. Even though they might not have the longest length of stay, they're really not doing well, like those working breeds. To have that wish list front and center. If you zoom in, you can actually see some papers scrawled about in our foster window. That is our wish list that people get to look at the dogs. And that leads very well into communication with patrons because you will be surprised how many patrons come and say, which dog do you want me to take? Like, I don't want to choose the dog. You tell me what's going to make the biggest impact. Because people are giving up their afternoon, sometimes a couple days. They want to know that they are making the biggest impact possible. So encourage that. Have that answer ready. Don't hem haw of like, well, I guess we could do the longest length of stays. Like, no, we want to get Lucy out of here. Lucy has not been on a foster field trip in 3 weeks. She's the one. Great. Patrons will appreciate the candor, I promise. And then I would recommend, if possible, to separate from traditional fostering. We know that there is a lot, and by separate, I mean physically separate, of where people pick up traditional fostering versus foster field trips. Of course, there's an issue of just congestion, that AA can just get busy, but also these are different fosters, right? I mean, in traditional fostering, I'm sure you've got training going on of here's what to do in emergency situations, here's emergency contacts, here's how to feed, here's how to do all of this. A lot of that goes out the window with foster field trips. So your patrons shouldn't really have to go through that extensive training process, if any training process at all, that your traditional fosters would have to, because they're just going to have this dog for a few hours. So just another one of those barriers to remove to really get these dogs out of their kennels. So before we move on to the supplies, I didn't include it on this slide, but also on return, when your patrons bring the foster dog back, have them fill out that report card that's on that marketing asset from that QR code I shared. Really talk to them of, hey, this dog did great with this, didn't do so great with that. It gives you invaluable information to pass on to potential adopters that you'll simply never find while they're in the shelter. And then expanded supplies. So a collar and leash are given. I hope that goes without saying that they're going to be leaving with a collar and leash. However, I do want to point out, please, please, please use a martingale collar. Many of you would not be surprised, but some of you would be surprised at how many dogs know how to back out of their collar. Even if you're not using martingale collars as a daily operational thing in your rescue or shelter, please utilize them while they're on a foster field trip. It's one thing when a dog gets loose in a confined area within your shelter or rescue. It's a different thing when we are actively encouraging people to take these dogs to a desert hike or a park or anything like that. And I brought it up before, the big hit is the car leashes. I didn't do a great job of explaining what they were before, but if you look at the blue water bottle just to the left of there, you can kind of figure out what it is from there. We got feedback from our patrons that those were a big hit. It just makes everything more safe, and it makes them so they're not juggling a dog that's trying to jump out of a car as soon as they open up that back seat. Harnesses are very much a as needed basis. Again, I'm going to bring up that 11-year-old pitty. Probably doesn't need it. But if you have a really high drive dog, one that you know is going to be pulling a lot, maybe have a harness on hand for them. The misting bottles, like I brought up, were also a big hit. I will admit they were expensive. But it was a big hit with the donors, so maybe include it on your wish list. The 2-in-1 bowl and bottle is not pictured here because at the time we ran out. But that was also something that patrons said that they were a big fan of. It's just basically a water bottle with a dog bowl attached onto it, and it just makes it all easier versus carrying a collapsible water bowl and a disposable water bottle. And of course, the poop bag dispenser. As a little bit of an anecdote, I would recommend considering a check-in and check-out process because supplies will go missing. And I'm just leveling with you here. I don't believe it's malicious. I don't believe people are stealing. It's just that people are excited. They've got a dog. They just had a great day with this dog, and things get left in the car and then just grow legs and we never see them again. So I think just a friendly reminder of saying, hey, I see that you left with a car hammock and a martingale collar and a harness. I'm noticing we don't have the harness. Can you go grab that? Just to help save that money in the long run, because supplies are one of the more expensive parts of this program, and it'll help you deal with that. And the last thing I want to point out on here are the Adopt Me leashes and Adopt Me vests. We have our Adopt Me branded vest on there, but as I'm sure you know, they're on Amazon. The Adopt Me leashes are just a few cents more than a normal leash. Same for the vests. Because we want other people, just community members, not even the person that took the dog out, to know that hey, this dog is up for adoption. We have gotten feedback from patrons that when they've got that Adopt Me leash or the Adopt Me sleeves that you put on a leash, they do get approached. And then, drives adoptions, which is always great. And this is one that I alluded to that is going to be very dependent on your shelter. So for those open admission shelters like here at the Animal Foundation, I would recommend limiting your choice of dogs, particularly to those large dogs. Because remember, the entire goal here is to reduce euthanasia, and those are the ones that are the most at risk. So focus on the ones that are most at risk. We do not foster field trip puppies for health reasons, and we also don't foster field trip small dogs because in our environment, they frankly don't need the help to get adopted most of the time. It's those large dogs. Again, if you run a rescue or have an organization that primarily has small dogs, obviously that will look different for you. So in that case, focus on your high drive dogs, like the like Jack Russell Terriers, that kind of thing, the really high drive ones. Also, you really want to focus on the dogs that have a reasonable positive pathway. Listen, things happen. Sometimes a dog declines quicker than you can really intervene, but you really shouldn't be putting dogs on your wish list that don't have a reasonable positive pathway. If we know that this dog has a bite history or is a bite risk, I would argue that should not be on your foster field trip. It's just overwhelming for the dog and it's setting them up for failure. And it's also a matter of medical, that if you know the dog has a non-medically treatable issue, whether it be financial or just truly untreatable, you don't want these people, your patrons, to be involved with this program and then find out that the dog they took out just yesterday was euthanized for one of these valid reasons, but a reason nonetheless. And again, focus on the dogs who most benefit: high drive, working breeds, ones showing compulsive behaviors, kennel neurosis, all of that. Which again, where that wish list comes into play. And again, make a wish list. There are certain things that you'll get tired of me saying, and that is one of them. Patrons want to know what is going to be the biggest impact. They really do. And even if you initiate that conversation, say, hey, I see that you're dressed in joggers. We've got this great husky that hasn't been out in 3 weeks. Do you want to take him? They want that. They want to know that they're not wasting their time. And then the last thing, off to the left there is just a snapshot of our report card that is an media thing on there. And you'll notice that there is no branding on there. Use it, print it off as is, throw it on the kennel cards. Once we get foster families to fill this out, this actually goes on the kennel along with their proper kennel card. That you'll see things on there that are things that we would just never learn in a shelter, that they're a couch potato, they like to go out on the town, how they are with cats. Yeah, we find that future potential adopters find this report card very, very valuable. I meant to bring this up earlier, but there is proper research on short-term fosters that was funded by Maddie's. So thank you very much, Maddie's. That it was a very large sample size. If I recall, it was about 25,000 dogs that they studied, and they found unequivocally that this makes a difference for short-term fosters. So again, if you're writing these grant proposals, if you're bringing this to your fundraising department or your operations department, data shows this works. It really does. And yeah, so just something to keep in mind. Before we move on to kittens, I do want to bring up something that I kind of just touched on. Funders love foster field trips. Like Kelly brought up, I'm the grants manager, but I do work with even large private donors. People love this, whether it be a corporate sponsorship or a large private donor. It's happy stories. You get great media. Corporations and people alike seem to be very willing to fund foster field trips. So work with whoever writes your grants to really get that data going. Use this research that I've got here. Use our data that I showed you earlier. It's a great fundraising opportunity. Moving on to neonatal kittens. Of course, these will not be leaving the shelter. This is going to be an entirely different conversation. So the end-all be-all with this is empowering your community to save lives, because this is going to boil down to two major forks of before they enter the shelter and after they enter the shelter. So we are going to be going through those one at a time. However, unfortunately, there is a disclaimer with this. Neonatal kitten fostering and care is extremely expensive. We all know it. Their formula alone can make or break the program. So I do want to be clear. Illness is incredibly common and it's very dangerous. And as we all know, that it costs us both financially and in our capacity for care, which is why these neonatal kittens are particularly at risk for euthanasia. The good news, though, saving kittens is a very easy proposal for fundraising. So that being said, I would really encourage you to work with your fundraising department, your development department, to have a firm plan in place of how you're going to maintain your initial funding, and then sustainability. You don't want to start a program like this and then end halfway through because your community will have questions of, hey, you told us how important this was. What happened? We want to avoid things like that. It doesn't show great transparency. So please work with your finance and fundraising to really have a firm plan in place, and rely on your community. Because again, a great example myself, I don't really like fostering neonate kittens, but I'll buy a can of formula. Make an Amazon wish list. Really engage your community. Give them alternative ways to help a program without engaging in the program itself. So, same as last time, here's what we changed. Community education. We did a lot of education surrounding kidnapping, kind of just taking abandoned, not really abandoned, neonate kittens that they just found in the wild. What to look for in community cats to make sure that they've actually been abandoned, that they're actually in duress. And of course, the importance of sterilizations. That shouldn't be new to anyone. We scream that from the rooftops. I know we do. And then also creating a neonate foster committee. These would be your very experienced neonate fosters, ones that are openly saying, hey, I know what I'm doing. If you get a litter of kittens coming in 5 minutes before you close, call me. I'll be there. Because as we know, they need care immediately. They need boots on the ground, being fed every 2 hours, all that. So I'll talk more about that committee in a moment. And then probably the biggest thing that we really drive here at the Animal Foundation is to be a resource, both to your fosters that are picking up kittens from your shelter, but also to your community members. We like to talk about intake diversion. Well, this is a great way to do that. Be a resource saying, hey, instead of bringing those kittens to us, here's a link tree on how to care for them. I'll give you formula. I'll do all this for you. Just don't bring them here until they're adoptable. Then we can sterilize and do all of that. So you want to engage in best practices that share of why we do these things. There is a lot of bad information out there about neonatal kittens, in the community cat and neonatal kittens. So you want to dispel a lot of those myths and really talk to your community about that. And then lastly, the expensive part, the expanded supplies, formula, gruel, bottles, nibbles, heat pads, all of that. Again, work with your fundraising and accounting departments to really have a firm plan in place for those. Okay, so going back to those two prongs I brought up before entering the shelter. These are for your community cats that people found just under their deck, in their garage, in their car, where there's a litter of kittens that mom is often not around, and they assume that they have been abandoned. So, talk about kidnapping. I cannot stress this enough. Please talk about kidnapping. You need to be transparent with the public that how to identify that these cats have the kittens have truly been abandoned, because most of the time, as we know, mom's just out hunting. She's coming back. But if you take those kittens and she comes back and sees that her litter's gone, she's not coming back most likely. She thinks that they've been predated. So you really want to engage your community, being transparent with your messaging. You need to be real with your patrons that it lowers your capacity for care when you bring us these litters of kittens. It does divert resources, and frankly, it increases euthanasia rates. Full stop. It does. So be honest. Use kinder language, of course, but you do want that message to get across. It's really the capacity for care that you really want to aim towards. I would consider making a marketing campaign before kitten season starts of what to look for, resources that your patrons can actually use to test to see if the mom cat has actually left. I will give you a link tree, our own link tree later on in this, but link trees are free. Make all those resources available. But again, talk about kidnapping. Please, please, please. And then fostering before intake. Empower your patrons to foster before bringing in animals. They don't have to come to your shelter. Say, hey, you have a litter of kittens? Great. Here's formula. Here's nipples. Here are the gruel that you're going to need. And here's how to do it. It increases your capacity for care, avoids unnecessary euthanasia because of declining health while in the shelter. Offer free supplies. It ultimately does save you money because, as we know, staffing is the most expensive part of sheltering, and not having your staff bottle feed a kitten every 2 hours and instead divert those resources to the animals that are already in your care. And then also educate your patrons on why keeping mother with kittens is so much more important. Again, as I'm sure we all know, kittens have a much better outcome when mom is around, particularly if mom has a safe place to nurse, that it's warm or cool, depending on your weather. And then once all that's done, bring them in for sterilization. And for those of you that are very into the neonate world, you know it helps with socialization. If they have had no human contact for the first 5 weeks of their life, you might just have a litter of community cats now. If you have a human interacting with them, whether it be bottle feeding themselves or just interacting with mama cat, that they see that you're around, it helps a lot with socialization. So and then it makes those cats actually adoptable versus being permanently community cats. But on the flip side, I acknowledge the vast majority of what you're going to be seeing is taking care of these kittens after entering the shelter. So training is a big one, and that is our QR code to our own kitten and neonate training video. Most fosters see neonates as intimidating because they are intimidating. They require around-the-clock care, and it's exhausting. And if you've ever spoken to someone that has fostered a neonate, they always talk about it with a half smile on their face because it's endearing and it's exhausting. But it's also very rewarding. Everyone will tell you that has taken in a neonate foster. So talk to your people. Explain to them what it's going to look like. Just be very transparent and offer training courses when possible. We have found that the recorded sessions have much more engagement than in-person sessions. That is just our community. It might be different for you, but just something to consider, recording it rather than having in-person training. And create your own link tree. I will give you an example of ours here in just a few slides. Your emergency on-call list of fosters. We have dubbed ours the Itty Bitty Kitty Committee. And again, these are your your neonate fosters that know what they're doing. They have volunteered saying, hey, if it's, hour 9 and you have this litter that came in and your staff is leaving in the next half hour, call me, I'll be there. These are usually reserved for motherless kittens because usually mom can take care of them overnight. But of course, special medical cases do exist. A big thing is timing. If you have a dedicated admissions department or lost and found, make sure that they know to communicate with your foster department so that your foster department can reach out to these specialized fosters. That once you see that person coming up to your building with, a cardboard box that you already know what's in the box, get your admissions department to talk to those fosters. And then lastly, from a marketing standpoint, people love to be part of a group. Consider making branding like what we did with the Itty Bitty Kitty. Make stickers, some kind of other collateral. These people do it for the love of the game, for sure, but people love being part of a group, and they like to feel acknowledged for doing this very difficult work. And there is our link tree. I will give you a moment to scan that while I get some water. So for those of you unfamiliar with Linktree, it is a completely free resource. Jump on there. No reason you shouldn't have this for your neonate fosters. That it just guides you towards, hey, my kitten looks like it's starting to fade. What do I do? I just found kittens in the wild. What do I do? We all know the ring of flower trick. But most people in the community don't know those tricks. Most people do think the kittens have just been abandoned and that mom's not out hunting. It serves as both education and a resource for your fosters because, of course, you're not open 24/7. If a kitten starts to fade at 2 a.m, they need to have a resource instead of just going to the emergency clinic, which, of course, would be way more expensive. So very useful. Feel free to use ours. If you want to steal verbiage, you can copy and paste as much as you'd like. And that was actually about it. I do want to take a moment to thank all of you for what you do for the community. Obviously for the animals, we all love animals, that goes without saying, but we ultimately serve the people in our community. And I do want to thank all of you. Please give yourself a round of applause. I really do appreciate everything that you all do. And that is the end of the presentation. And I can open up to some questions now.
Thank you so much, Ryan. That was wonderful. First question. How do you handle liabilities with patrons taking the dogs out?
Great question. So that was one of the big things that we initially did tackle. Of course, we do have them sign our normal foster forms, the liability waivers. And we do, I mentioned before, not delving too deep into the foster training, but the training that we do bring up is don't take them to dog parks. Don't take them anywhere that they're going to be off leash. We are very clear about that, of do not do that. From a more clerical standpoint, because this is a bit of my background, work with your insurance provider to make sure that you're even covered for things like this. The liability waiver does go a long way, but as we know, it's not foolproof. So have that firm plan in place for those emergencies. You don't want to plan for emergency after it's already happened. I will say, given all of the foster field trips that we've done, we've only had two emergency cases. It's not going to be as common as you think, as long as you do the proper education of no off leash. If the dog is getting overstimulated, maybe go somewhere else. Things like that. Education goes a long way towards avoiding liability.
Sarah has a question. How do you train fosters to handle at-risk dogs in a short amount of time? I think the underlying question is, what kinds of dogs at risk are you sending out to?
Absolutely. So, yeah, I actually should have brought that up more closely. So, when I was talking about at-risk dogs, I was speaking specifically about non-dangerous animals. So, again, if it's a bite risk, that's not eligible for a foster field trip. However, we know that anxiety, that's not going to preclude them from participating in foster field trips. So, again, that goes back to the education point that hopefully you know these dogs that are going out saying, hey, we know Luna the Husky is a big jumper. She will try and back out of her harness. She will try and get out of your car. To have that kind of heads up with the patrons. And it goes back to the very last question of just, I don't want to say passive training because it is training, but not that in-depth training. It's more of a best practices. That's actually a good way to look at it. Best practices of here's how you're going to handle the dog, two hands on the leash whenever possible, proper dog handling, all of that. Education, again, goes a long way, and that's where that communication with your foster window comes in.
Someone says, at my local municipal shelter, people have to go through volunteer orientation and training, which takes weeks, and then have a certain number of walking hours in order to qualify to take dogs out on field trips. The public is very discouraged by that. Just curious about your thoughts on that.
So transparency, we used to do the same thing. That was the same for us. And to be clear, for volunteers that are on campus walking dogs, we still do require that for liability and insurance reasons. However, whether it's a foster field trip or a long-term foster, there's really no difference functionally from the dog. You're still handling the dog, you're still taking them out. So we don't require all of that anymore. And like I said, we've only had a couple emergency cases, so we are finding that it's not really needed. Um, so we also have our volunteer orientation, which can take a couple weeks, and then we also have our long-term foster orientation, which can take upwards of a week. We don't require either one of those for these foster field trips. We require a very brief application. If you want to see our application, it's on our website. Just go to animalfoundation.com and you can see what it looks like, along with a basic waiver, and then that's it. We do again communicate to them of best practices, but from experience of doing what your local municipal shelter is currently doing, it kind of destroys the pro. I shouldn't just say destroy. That's a bit unfair, but it does put up a pretty significant barrier to the program. And that is one of the reasons we saw such a explosion of foster field trips when we removed those barriers. So it helps a lot.
And I will say, science appears to agree with it with you. I know in one of the recent studies on field trips, the researchers recommended that field trips be open to the public because they were so much more successful, and the organizations were able to really engage people.
Exactly.
So, Jason is asking, how do you handle if someone wants to continue to foster a dog after a trip? Is it something you do? And if yes, how have you streamlined this process if the field trip and regular foster are separated?
Absolutely. So yes, the short answer is yes. If you want to keep the dog, fantastic. If someone takes them out for a foster field trip and they say, you know what, I'm jiving with this dog, I want to keep it, let's turn this into a long-term foster. We have them keep that dog. Just let us know, obviously, like please let us know that's what you want to do. And then we put them towards the traditional fostering route. Then we send them the training videos. It's a different liability waiver. But the dog does not come back to us because we don't want the dog. We want it to stay out there. If you bonded with the dog that much, fantastic. And I do want to make a note of the data that I showed you before with our particular data. I excluded anything that turned from a foster field trip into a long term. So all that data is specific foster field trip, even if it turned into a long term.
Thank you. Kayla is asking, do dogs go out on back-to-back trips, or do you give them an intentional break between? I'm wondering if research shows that too many trips with different people in a short period of time is more stressful than good.
So I will be honest, and I don't know the second part of the question. I don't know if research has been done on that. Kelly, if you know, by all means chime in. Um,
I don't believe so. As far as I know, there is not research on that.
Yeah. But in terms of back to back, so we don't allow multiple field trips in the same day because that's very overstimulating, right? They get done with one, they're probably exhausted. They're going to be sleeping the rest of the day. But if we're talking just day after day, we do allow that. We don't see it often just because of the volume of animals that we have. For our really high risk animals that we are really promoting to get out, they often go, they go on Monday, they have a rest on Tuesday, they go out again on Wednesday. That's common. And we haven't really found any issues with that. If anything, it's really showing, and this is where it enters opinion territory, right? I would argue that it's introducing these dogs to multiple people that, hey, people are happy because we don't know what the history of these animals are. They might have a bad history with strangers. I would argue it can help to overcome that. Not all the time. And again, this is where communicating with your foster field trips patrons when they bring them back, of learning like, hey, I found out Luna the husky didn't really like strangers. Great, good to know. We might want to revamp what we do with her in terms of foster field trips. But the short answer, yes, we allow it, and we haven't really seen any downsides to it.
Thank you. Um, someone is asking, when we're talking about euthanasia, are we defining their quality of life by Aristotelian, I'm not sure if they said that right, flourishing. So like, how are we defining it?
That will vary wildly from shelter to shelter and rescue to rescue. So in large shelters like ours, we do have kennels, we do daily enrichment, we do play group, but it's noisy, it's scary. We acknowledge that. We do try and reduce that as much as possible. But what we would call thriving is very likely different from what a small shelter with 5 dogs on campus would call thriving. Of course, we do adhere to best practices of, watching dogs to make sure they're not declining too quickly, and then we start to promote them if they are. So that would be a large question with your operations department, operations director, whoever that might be, of what you want thriving to look like. We, like many of you, we take euthanasia very seriously. This isn't a, how to avoid euthanasia thing, but we make our daily rounds, we do all of that. And when we see a dog is declining, we put them on our wish list for that foster field trip. So I acknowledge that's a little bit of a non-answer, and I apologize. And that's primarily because it will vary pretty drastically depending on what your situation looks like.
Thank you. Brooklyn is asking, what supplies are in a fading kitten kit?
Oh, if you, I don't have time to go grab it, but Google, it's on our link tree, is the short answer. But things like sugar packets, a nipple, a blanket. Oh, actually, my foster coordinator is here. Actually, Alec, come here. Oh, jeez. Do you want to list off what's on our foster kitten kit?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everybody. So we put these together as cheaply as possible, and we can get them down to about $3. So we have a thermometer, we have a syringe, we have a container for the lube for the syringe, and we also have, it's not in here, but we have sugar and salt packets that go in. And the papers that you see rolled up here are different instructions for the 3 things of fading kitten that we can most control: the dehydration, the hypothermia, and the hypoglycemia. So because it's so essential that they get the immediate care, we try to provide everything that they can have everything in 2 minutes, know what to do, get it ready, and go. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And again, it's on our link tree. So if you want a supply list, it's on there. We ran the numbers. These cost us under $1 to make. And they literally save lives. And another fundraising opportunity, throw a logo on there. People will be willing to pay for it.
Thank you. What are the eligibility requirements to take a dog out overnight? And what information do you collect from the day tripper before authorizing them to do it?
Great question. All the standard information you would expect. We do require some form of identification, usually driver's license. So, name, phone number, address, that kind of thing. We don't require proof of residence or anything like that. That's honestly another barrier. We trust that they know that they're capable of fostering. That is for the foster field trip. Again, it's different for full traditional fostering, but for the foster field trip, basic contact information. Because to be frank, it has happened before that people took a dog out, didn't really realize it was a foster field trip, and we call them a couple days later like, hey, are you coming? It's never malicious. It's just people not understanding the program. But pretty basic contact information.
Thank you. How do you manage the chaos of dog day outs without appointments? We are in a college town, so we've made things appointment based to avoid long wait times. And what system do you have to manage it?
And good question, because that is also going to vary quite a bit on your community, because you brought up that you're in a college town, so you have these young kids that want to come out and actually do this. So how we manage it, it is largely first come, first serve. It is a line situation. We try to have two foster field trip employees or volunteers present at any given time so that we can really keep it moving. We have also found that people tend to not care that much about waiting within reason, because they're here to do something nice. They're here to have a good time. So as long as you let them know, hey, I'm going to be with you in a second. Why don't you take a look at our wish list? Because we actually have those printed out packets of our wish list. Gives people something to browse through of, oh, let's take Sparky out. He looks fun. So that would help a lot. I will acknowledge it might not work for you if it's going to be that busy. I would recommend trying to pilot it. If it doesn't work, worst case scenario, it doesn't work. No one's going to get hurt by it not working. And maybe even have restricted hours that would help at least let people know, like, hey, there's an end time. So if you show up at 2:55 and we close at 3, you might not get a dog. That might help mitigate that.
Thank you. And this is going to have to be the last question because we do have to move on. But Crystal's asking, how long can someone take a dog out for? At the shelter I work out, they prefer the dogs to be at the shelter during adoption hours. Do you find that it affects adoption rates? And how is your population at the shelter? You know, also, what do you do if somebody comes in looking for a dog, but that dog is on a field trip?
Great. Okay. I will try and keep this succinct. So first, I'm going to talk about the space of the shelter, because kennels are always high demand. We do have a little kennel card that we put on there just saying, hey, it's on part of the media that I shared. Hey, I'm on a foster field trip. Be back later. We do ask the fosters, hey, are you gone for a day or are you going overnight? Because if it's going overnight, that kennel gets freed up. And we communicate that with our kennel techs to get that cleaned and moved along. But if they're coming back same day, no point in doing all that. They get to be put right back into the same kennel. What was the first part of that question, Kelly? I'm sorry. It's a three-pronged question.
Right. Do they get frustrated if they come in and the dog is not there? How do you handle this? Is it only dogs not currently available? Wait, that's a different question. It's a very similar question.
A very similar question. So, yeah, as long as that kennel card is there, that patrons know, hey, I'm on a foster field trip, not a big deal. And that's where it falls onto the adoption counselors to look up the dog and say, hey, they're on a foster field trip. If you want to come back tomorrow or even later on today, the dog will be here. What have you. We've even had kind of a case by case of, hey, I can reach out to the foster. If you want to meet them at a park, we can help coordinate that communication. That boils down to very case by case at that point. But in a smaller rescue or shelter, I can see that being very doable to treat that foster field trip patron as a proper foster of, hey, go meet this person for a meet and greet. I think that answered all parts of the question, did it?
Yes, I think so. Okay, I'm just going to ask the last one because there's just one more. Did you have a process to convert a field tripper to a longer term foster?
Short answer, no. If they want to do that, kind of what I brought up a little bit earlier in the Q&A, they just let us know, no problem at all. We love that. And then we move them towards the traditional fostering pathway of, we need more contact information. It's a different liability form, all of that. But again, the dog wouldn't come back to us. It would just be transferring them to, not transferring to a different department, transferring them from a foster field trip status to a proper foster status, because there are different insurance liabilities with that.
All right. Thank you so much, Ryan. This was really helpful and wonderful. And thanks to all of you who are watching today's webcast. Any questions that you have from now until that you have not asked yet will be answered in Maddie's monthly foster connection thread on Maddie's Pet Forum. So Ryan will be available for the next few days on MPF to continue the discussion. Feel free to post more questions there. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next month. We really appreciate it.
Thank you all so much.